Friends, what's going on here? This is ADF part 3, fun with Azure. So what is it that we're gonna look at in that session here? So right hand side, we're gonna create a SQL VM, and we're gonna then basically connect to that SQL VM from the self-hosted runtime via the SMS tool that we installed in the last video. So I'm kind of structuring it that way that on the right hand side the green one is the done items, right? Now we're adding 6 and 7 here, right? And 3 and 4 is what we did in part 2 of this series. Okay, so if you haven't seen those one, you may want to head over there and check those out. This is what we're building, basically just a playground for Data Factory. Eventually I want to also go to Synapse, and I started a series on Synapse as well, but this is what I have currently. You see the red arrow points to the SQL VM. This is the one that we're gonna build in that session. Okay, so let me head over here real quick. I can talk a little bit more details on that later, but I want to quickly, before I provision, let me let me show you the infrastructure here. Well, better said, the topology, right? So VM single NIC, and then we have the VM here, the NSG, and the public IP. So now I'm gonna go here, and we're making sure that we're in the right resource group, and we are. And we're gonna select all the required parameters here. SQL VM. It's gonna be my name, and I want this to be in the East US. Let me check that one out. Okay. And we don't want a redundancy. Standard is fine. SQL 19 is fine. Let me make sure we have the right password. Of course, a very secure one. Okay. Put that in. And then this one is, we don't want to have that VM to have an RTP port. So let me go here. So this is standard is fine with the disk. This is not about performance testing or anything. So VM. This is important that we change this to that subnet. And then I'm okay with a basic network security group. The interesting part here is actually, and this one needs to be none, actually, the public IP, right? But the interesting part here is, if we did select none, then we would not need to add a port later, right? So I'm gonna do basic, and then I basically add an inbound port to open 1433. That's the default SQL Server port to allow inbound connections to that port, right? All the other stuff is pretty much the default. That's all cool. Management. I'm gonna go with the defaults. In a production scenario, this would be a different game. Obviously, here I'm enabling SQL auth. Okay, all these other SQL related configurations, for now the defaults are fine, and then we're gonna provision that. So, and while this is provisioning, we can actually, I find this very helpful here, that basically validation passed, and then you can one more time look at it. If you realize here that something is misconfigured, you can still go back, which is kind of helpful. VM, just looking through all of this. Subnet, VNet, that all makes sense. Okay, I think we're good here. So hitting the create button. So this starts the deployment. And as we deploy stuff, here you're going to see a change soon. So we're going to see a second NIC. We're going to also see another NSG associated to that NIC. And then we need to add, basically, we need to open up that port to allow that remote connection. So while this is cooking, let's go over here to the self-hosted runtime VM. And this is up and running, which is helpful. And then let's connect from here and see if we can we can get to it. And apparently we can, which is helpful. And remember, here is apparently yeah, there's a test that already worked. So, but this is not. Let me remove that connection here. Okay, and then we do a database connection. Okay, so I still have a private IP in here. Let's see if that works actually, and then we can reuse that. I think this is still gonna be the same. Okay. But if not, then we're just gonna change it. But basically what I'm doing here is the private IP of the SQL Server VM, and then I'm trying to authenticate via SQL auth. So let me go over back here, and then here. So there should be a SQL VM soon. Okay, it's there. And then down here we see the private IP, right? So 10.3.05, and I think that's the same as I saw over there on the 10.3.05. Yeah, that's it. So I mean, if I hit connect now, I will not be able to connect, because remember, there is it may even still provision. That's one reason. And the other reason is there's an NSG in place that does not yet have 1433 open, which we use here for that connection. So this should not work, and that's so we're gonna get an error message here. But let's check where the deployment is. It's in progress as expected, and let's refresh that view here. We should see the VM, the second NIC, and the NSG being added, and that's actually correct. So we see the VM and the NSG and the VM. So, and this NSG is actually associated to the NIC, which makes perfect sense. So let me see here, there's no 1433 added, right? So that definitely needs to be done. So what we could do is, go here to the security rule, go add, and then destination port range is 1433. And then so there's also in the GitHub repo, there's also a script to do the exact same thing. Let me see if that works when it's so we have that now, and obviously he doesn't like that because that's of sorts a security risk. But in the associated GitHub script that I have here, there is actually a command, this one here. This does the same thing. Okay, 1433. You could also use that one. You don't have to use the GUI like I did, but it's kind of helpful. So we see it's still deploying. Okay, and let me go back to the VM. I want to see if, yeah, this obviously did throw an error. Makes sense. Okay, you can hit that button again and it went through already, which is good. So we were able to deploy now, and even the deployment is still in progress. We're already able to connect. This is pretty interesting. Yeah, so we should soon see this being finished. Okay, so let me go back to the VM. And we don't, of course, have yet a database. And let me go to new query. And then from my self-hosted runtime, before I do that, see, now we're complete. That's good. Okay, so go here. This is the resource. That's all good. Let me go back here one more time. Networking, and then topology. So yeah, this looks all as expected. Private endpoint. There's no NICs yet. Okay, that makes all sense. So let me go back to here, and I do have also a script in here that generates a database and like a test table and some data, and just copy that over. Let me go here. Okay, then we put that in here, and I first need to run that piece here. Okay, then I can comment this one out, and then we basically generate I just generate the database. Let me and it's called telemetry, right? There's no table yet, but there's one table in here that I'm gonna build. It's called telemetry underscore staged, and there's just a bunch of telemetry data. It's a table with a ComSite primary key. You can see the ID and the R type is basically the primary key, and here is like a record how this looks like. This is gonna be the data that we then pull into the data lake and Azure and SQL Azure to be processed by Data Factory, right? So let's see here. Now we basically see this, right? And we should see data here, right? And we do. So this is how this data looks like. Script is up on the GitHub side, so you can use that as well. We just need to have some table. You could definitely build your own, but this is quite helpful. Okay, so I think this is already kind of what I wanted to show. So we did have the SQL VM now. We did build the SQL VM, and now we have 19 items here. I also noticed that sometimes, and let me go back here, sometimes it does actually on my side add additional configurations on the NSGs. Didn't do it this time. Okay. This might be policies from my organization. It's nothing to do with that one, but yeah, this is pretty cool. This is what I wanted to basically accomplish in that video. So we created the SQL server on that SQL VM, and then we added a port here, 1433. We opened that one up to be able to then connect to that from the self-hosted runtime that we installed last time. So in the next video, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to install the self-hosted runtime on the self-hosted runtime VM, and then we should be able to connect to that table that we generated today. All right, this is pretty much what I wanted to do, and hope it was fun and interesting. Leave me a comment, and have a good one. Cheers.